Greetings, everyone, and welcome to this bonus episode of the Hired Geek Podcast, episode number 102, with Monisha Longacre of StudentBridge. So this is a great episode learning about Monisha's unique journey into her role now in education technology, helping support institutions with digital enrollment solutions. And she just has some great insights and great thoughts that I think will really resonate with folks. So super excited for you to get listening and hearing more about what she has to say. But before we get to that, I'm going to give a quick heads up. We just launched a super cool merch store through TeePublic. So you can get logos for the blog and the podcast on a variety of different items. Love to hear what you think. Please go there, grab some stickers, notebooks, shirts, sweaters, anything that calls out to you. It's a great way to support the show, and we're hoping to build that out over time. We have some other cool logos that we're hosting on there as well, some other stuff that I think is cool. So that also does help support the show as well, so if you kind of get that through our storefront. So please do go check it out. Would really appreciate it. Give us your feedback. There is a link to the merch store in the description of this episode and also in the show notes for this and all future episodes. We linked out to it on the blog as well. So a lot of ways to go find it, but really appreciate the support. And with all that being said, after this brief message from our sponsor, this is bonus episode number 102 with Monisha Longacre. This episode is sponsored by Degree.me, a one-stop college research tool for students. If you work for a college or university, you'll want to learn all about their ability to connect you with the right students at a budget-friendly price. To find out more, please visit degree.me/HEG. Well, I'm so excited to talk with you, Monisha, to learn more about your very robust professional journey. I was kind of spying on your LinkedIn. You've done so many cool and interesting things. So just learning kind of about all that and what's brought you to your current work with StudentBridge and learning more about what you and your team are doing there. And just talking about just all of the ongoing kind of complexities of higher ed in 2020. So we're going to get right to it. If you want to introduce yourself really quickly and give a brief overview of your professional journey and how you got to be where you are today.
Great. Thank you so much, Dustin. I'm really glad to be here today with you. I've been very fortunate and very blessed in my career journey. I never kind of anticipated where it would take me, but it's taken me on some really interesting steps. My educational experience and background was actually in communications, and I thought I was going to be a journalist and worked at the daily student newspaper at University of Virginia when I was as a fourth year there, and we quickly realized that while journalism was really fun and intriguing and adrenaline pumping, it wasn't very conducive to normal family life and normal hours. So I quickly pivoted over towards corporate PR, got my master's degree from Boston University in corporate public relations, and was very fortunate to land my first job at Lotus Development in the early 90s, where this thing called the internet came along, and really was at the kind of the forefront of the convergence of communications and technology, and really thought to myself, wow, this is a really interesting place to be because I can see how it'll change communications, not realizing at the time how dramatically it was going to change everything that we did. So that kind of took my communications background and sent it on a technology path. I was a webmaster at Ernst & Young when the webmaster was a one person's job, and you would create HTML files and FTP them to a site. But the mainstay of my career was at the Weather Channel. I spent 13 years there. Learned a lot and really got to see the evolution of the internet. I joined weather.com when it was a startup. We literally could enter a 5-digit zip code and you'd get a 5-day forecast, and that was it. And we built everything around it. So we built an interactive campus maps before Google's Maps was what it was. I had the fortunate pleasure of building the first radar on your phone app. It was literally green dots going across a flip phone. Again, not realizing how quickly that would be something that everybody expected. So after that, then I spent a couple years on going kind of in the smaller businesses, having a little more oversight. I worked at Play On Sports, which was an interesting concept of basically providing a technology platform to high school students to allow them to stream their high school games and events online. It was a subscription business, spent a couple years there. And then I also went the entrepreneurial path and founded a couple businesses of my own. I had a productivity business. I launched an app called Priorigami that basically was like the Fitbit for productivity. And then also co-founded a company called Score, where we did online, on-demand tutoring for student athletes to help make sure that they were academically eligible for scholarships. And that landed me here at StudentBridge. So I joined StudentBridge in February of this year. So you can only imagine what the onboarding process has been like. We were literally in the office for 2 weeks until COVID kind of hit and changed our worlds in so many different ways, both personally, just being remote and having to onboard with the team remotely, and then also professionally in terms of really having to step up and support colleges and universities as they grappled with closed campuses.
Yeah, that's wild. Because I'm very grateful for having a fully remote position before all of this, and one day to the next, it was pretty seamless. But especially if somebody was like starting a new job, 2 weeks is you could meet some people in person, and then you move around. It's maybe a little bit easier, but even still, It's such little time. So it's wild, but
Yeah, it's been interesting. You just kind of miss out on like the lunches or, the happy hours, just the informal gathering just hasn't happened because, we were all forced to work out of our homes. But pleasantly, we've been very productive. Everyone really adapted to the virtual learning environment really quickly. And we didn't miss a beat. So from that standpoint, it was very encouraging.
Good. Well, I guess good. Yeah, it's also good to hear because I wasn't sure if it was just sort of an epiphany or something, something that came to you in terms of just making, the transition to StudentBridge, but it feels like you are kind of building towards it. And there's, I can see now kind of the connective tissue even more clearly.
It really was a great opportunity to kind of take my experiences and apply them. But really more importantly, I have a daughter who is a senior in college. And she's applying to law school, so she's going through the admissions process again. And my son is a senior in high school, and so he's going through his admissions process. And to me, as the parent going through this process, it's shocking to me how much is paper-based, how much they're dependent on email. And, and my son especially doesn't realize that the mail is a thing and that, direct pieces are coming. I mean, he doesn't even has no awareness that is a thing. And literally when he goes into his email, if he doesn't know who it's from, he selects them all and deletes them all. And so it was really apparent to me that, and for him especially, if it's not on, in a YouTube video, if it's not video and it's not engaging, they're missing the mark. So from a personal standpoint, I definitely saw the opportunity in that how ripe higher ed was for really making that digital transformation and reaching this next generation of kids where they spend time. And it's not in the mailbox.
Yeah. Which I guess, that's just interesting kind of life context or just being able to because I think, for any sort of thing, sometimes, it can be difficult for people to you're just going through a process and you're all right, well, this is just how it is. But then you seeing your children go through, wait a second, that kind of seems odd, you're kind of zoomed out a little bit more. I definitely see the opportunity, and the disconnect, right, is really kind of screaming at me saying, wow, there's got to be a better way to get to these kids. Well, that's just a perfect segue, I guess, then if you want to kind of give kind of contextual explanation here of what StudentBridge does, because, you're kind of leading into this digital transformation that's happening in higher ed and so many different kind of work streams and functional areas and everything. But just kind of give a quick explanation on what StudentBridge does exactly.
Absolutely. So StudentBridge was founded out of a rich media video production company that was kind of on the forefront of really developing interactive and engaging video concepts. And then they decided to focus specifically in the higher ed space. And the two flagship products were the Video View Book, which is kind of an engaging and authentic, contained video experience where students can really get a sense and fit and the feel of the school, through videos of the campus or interviews with the students or faculty. And it's all video, and it's all you can navigate through it. So you're not just sitting there and watching hours and hours of content, but you can actually, develop your own playlist and go through that. And then the second one was our interactive campus maps. And it's not just a map like Google Maps, but we embed video and content so that it's kind of like almost like a guided tour of the campus. So we were focused on those two things. But when COVID hit and the campuses shut down, all of a sudden the new needs emerged in that the colleges were right in the middle of their enrollment season. And a lot of them had admitted student days planned where the students could come to campus and make their final decisions about which school they wanted to commit to. Well, those all got canceled. So in very short order, we were able to pivot and leverage our platform to develop virtual online events. So in 10 days, we helped a college get an admitted student day virtual setup for them. And since then, we've been doing orientations, we've been doing open houses, we've been doing a whole variety of events that were, traditionally meaning, 6 months, 8 months ago, all held as on-campus events in person. So that's been really interesting. And then we also have a product called Visitor, which is a self-guided web-based app that prospective students can use to tour the campus, but it has the voice of the student ambassadors of the school, and there's pictures and context so that it seems like, those museum tours where you actually have a guide, which again, all of a sudden the need increased where the traditional campus tours weren't able to be held the way they were, either restricted in terms of no access to campus or, limited numbers of people together as a group. So both of those became very interesting. And then quite honestly, the number of kids, like my son, for example, who this next class is unable to visit schools. So their entire impressions and decisions about which colleges they're going to apply to are based solely on their virtual experiences and their connections on their online site. And so while a lot of our solutions, our engagement solutions, were nice to haves, in a very short amount of time, it became a must-have for that college. So you can only imagine the interest has definitely spiked and is definitely peaking. We've closed over 107 deals this year, with the majority of them coming after March. And we are just absolutely thrilled that we're in the position to help support these schools as they really try to put their best foot forward on their websites.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I'm not surprised. Like, on one hand, I'm not surprised that there's been so much demand. Like, it's just like, because like you said, it's really just like the necessity, kind of being the mother of, it's obviously not like invention, but, it sort of applies here. Yeah. Just like, it's like, okay, well, we need to do this. How can we do it in, digital spaces and stuff? And I think, because you already kind of talked about, so what I wanted to get to next of like how the current climate is changing the work that you and your team does. And, just from what you're saying of, these virtual admitted student days and open houses and tours and everything, like, that is so valuable because I think, there is, I think, an alternate universe out there where it's just like, no, well, I guess we can't do any of these things. And like, some people may, be legacies or like, they have just some kind of shorthand for like the college experience, or like, they can talk to family members or, other people in their circles about like what college is like, what's a good one or something, or, they might be able to navigate this on their own, but like it is so valuable for so many students and families to be able to have really just like really tangible experiences to know, what kind of experience their student is going to have, like, who are the people that are going to be there to support them and those sort of things. So it's just like, it's so valuable that these things can be done consistently and well, and, all of that. So I'm so glad that
Yeah.
you're being able to help so many different, institutions, with these sort of efforts.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like we're trying to help the students as well, like give them enough of an inside view to feel like, is this a good fit for me? And that's hard to gauge from parents' recommendations or where your cousin went to school and all those, things, which is great for the early part of the process. But as you're trying to really decide where you want to commit and make, home for the next 4 years, some of those intangibles become really important.
Right. Well, because I think that's like I've talked to a lot of people recently, and just part of this digital transformation of higher ed, and there's so much that happens before the student even commits to any institution, but like that is such an important part of the equation, because I think ultimately it is that like if the student makes the right choice for the right institution for the right program, then they're going to be so much more set up for success, so much more motivated, and like just they feel really comfortable and confident that they found the right place for them, versus, because I think like you're saying, like all this kind of shorthands of like, oh, well, my cousin's, nephew's brother went here, like, so that's like all they're aware of, or just like the kind of like household name brands of higher education, those sort of things. It's like, those are great places, but is it the best place for you? Maybe, I don't know, like, and if they're able to like, talk with somebody and like, take advantage of all these, opportunities to get that firsthand look and actively engage with someone from that institution, they're just making better informed choices.
So yeah, we look at, and in fact, we refined just recently, we refined our vision, and I think it really encapsulates what we're trying to do. And so our vision is for every student to find a perfect fit, and for every school or higher ed institution to fill every seat. And so that's really what is kind of our guiding principle as we, really kind of evolve and continue to develop our technology platform and the different engagement solutions that we offer to our partners.
Right. Well, because that's even the thing, is like it, helping to better represent these brands, these institutional brands in the digital space, allows any student just to have more of an awareness where like they just might not have been able to know about them, because it's like, okay, we're not willing to like spend money on mailers, or we don't have access to those, lists or something, like, so, there's an institution out there that's a perfect fit for me, but I just don't know about it, or I don't, I just, right. They miss out on each other, kind of the ships passing in the night kind of thing. So yeah, it's great kind of on both sides. Yeah. Like, helping kind of both sides to get the right fit, and, and I guess, that makes me think of, because with so much of what's going on, I've kind of talked with people about this lately, and just kind of all natures of what, life in 2020 looks like, is, a curiosity for me of like, how many of these things are actually going to stick around, because some of them are like really meaningful, social programs, or just like efforts on an institution that, puts them in, these digital spaces and stuff. So, this could even, just be for your team or the work that you do, are there positive changes that you've seen in the work that's occurring that you hope stick around?
So yeah, like I mentioned, I think, higher ed was very comfortable in what they had been doing, the things that have been working for them traditionally, like the direct mail pieces, like the traditional college fairs and high school visits, which is now, as we kind of get into the next recruitment cycle, all of those things have been limited as well. So they're not able to meet face to face with students, in their high schools or at their national collegiate fairs. So it has really disrupted their traditional recruiting and enrollment practices, and they're trying to figure out how to replace them. And I know a lot of them are trying to do Zoom meetings, but you think about these poor kids who are learning online and they're on Zoom all day, and then the last thing on earth they want to do at the end of the day is go into another Zoom meeting. So it really is, kind of an opportunity to truly reinvent and rethink how we approach these things differently. And I think that's been really exciting. But going back to what I was mentioning about the virtual events, what was really interesting is these colleges are seeing a significant increase in participation. So one of them had a 35% increase in participation for their virtual event. And what they quickly learned was that the in-person events were cutting out a big group of students that either were unable to attend for scheduling conflicts or for financial reasons or for whatever reason they weren't able to attend in person, but they are getting online and doing the virtual event. So they have committed and understood that in order to fill that gap, even when they go back to in-person events, the virtual event will always be an ongoing component. So just thinking again differently, that you're going to reach other people and more people and maybe a diverse group of people by not limiting yourself to, the in-person traditional event. So that's been really interesting to see. And I hope those kinds of things continue and that we continue to work with the colleges to think differently and say, is there a better way to do this? We just did an orientation event for another school. It was a law school, and they aren't. As a result, they didn't have to print any materials. And so she said, and she was like, I'm really excited because not only am I saving trees on our planet, but I'm saving a lot of money too. So again, sustainability comes into the play in the forefront, which is something that, we're all trying to kind of chip away at and do our part. And, if we can do more of the virtual experiences and rely less heavily on some of the paper or in person or some of the costly kinds of traditional practices, then that's really exciting as well. So I'm really, really interested to see how we can continue to push the envelope, both with our partners and also with us ourselves independently, really building up and innovating on what we've already built as a foundation.
Well, what it makes me think of, because I think, we're increasingly going to be in this sort of world where, there's just different modalities of the same offering where, you'll have one that's on campus, you'll have one that's online for these admitted student days and stuff like that. So, and I think because I think, people always worry about with these things where it's like, oh, well, we just start doing all these online webinars, then it's you're replacing people's work, or we're never going to do anything in person anymore. Which, again, I think there's value in both, like you're saying, to kind of broaden the access for sure. And then for the people that can come in person, if they want to, then, they're absolutely able to. But I think, the other worry is that you're kind of losing out on the high touch aspect of, a lot of this work. But I think, I don't know if you kind of have any anecdotes about this, but, I think it can be done really well and still kind of give sometimes tangible little welcome packages or something, when students commit and different things like that. But I think, when you're doing it well, I think it feels just as kind of high touch, even though you're using different technology platforms, when you're doing this work.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been very encouraging to see kind of, I hate the fact that COVID has forced us into this situation, but it's been very encouraging to see how, the higher ed institutions are starting to adapt and embrace some of this technology. And then it's leading to that innovation, which I think, in hindsight was long overdue, but we're definitely stepping up in terms of gaining some momentum there.
Yeah. And the other thing, I'm also a sustainability nerd because you mentioned it, not having to print all this stuff or whatever. Obviously that's a huge benefit. And I don't know if people have really if they have, they maybe haven't, they should be broadcasting it from the, rooftops. But because, I think there's a huge sustainability impact for, these digital engagement efforts. Cause I'm also thinking about how many people did not have to drive all over the place. How many parking lots don't have to be built, there are tangible, sustainable impacts and certainly, budgetary ones as well as the cost benefit of oh, we got this license or a partnership, to develop digital engagement efforts. And how much does that cost? And if you get X amount of more students, it pays for itself. And you can do that many more virtual events or stuff, something like that. So, it's just such interesting stuff to think about. Cause I think, I've sometimes been challenged with this where, my logical brain is always trying to think of just the cost benefit analysis and, return on investments and all that. But it's kind of speaking, well, I guess it's also it can speak to that. And also just the values based, like you're talking about, like the mission, that it's just like, well, this is just the right thing to do. Like we should be helping these institutions to reach as many students as possible so that students can make the best informed decision. Like, let's just do it for that. And then it's like, it's kind of just like a coating on top. If, we're getting a return on this investment and more students and they're happy, that's great. Like, we want to measure those things as well. But that's just always, because I think that is somebody like I talked to on the podcast several weeks ago, like caught me. And I was just like, yep, that's a very good point. Because like, I always think about dollars and cents, but it's sometimes a little bit more than that.
Well, and you bring up a really good point about ROI. And I think one of the other advantages that we offer is in, traditional marketing with like the direct mail pieces and, some of those things. It's really hard to measure the return because, it's kind of offline engagement. Whereas on digital, we have full analytics, real-time access to 24/7. You can see who's coming in, who's engaging, how much of the content have they consumed. We can track all the conversions to whatever the click-through actions are. So it's, it really gives you a lot of analytics and insights into, that potential, that prospective student and what their interests are, and then tracking them throughout the funnel, when they're at the top of the funnel, when they're simply just interested in the school, to getting them to actually apply and then to actually enroll. And we really are focused on making sure that we've got digital solutions and then connected analytics throughout the funnel to help them become smarter marketers, if you will.
Yeah, because it's even just simpler things like, if somebody attends an event, they're this much more likely to, deposit or, just persist and those sort of things. Or like, we did an event on financial aid and, those students felt way more satisfied with just like their onboarding or something. I mean, it's just like you were able to get those insights, or, like this thing was far more impactful than this thing that we did, which, super, super helpful. But, so, this one, a very broad question, so take it as you will, but, and, you've had this long career, like you said, experiencing just like the advent of the internet and how it's, impacting work streams and everything. So I'm just curious, with that kind of like, even like longitudinal view, combined with just kind of having to like navigate the short term, what advice would you give to other higher ed professionals who are, working to navigate all of this, like, complex and constantly changing climate? Just anything that comes to mind is just kind of helpful advice.
Absolutely. In fact, I'm taking it really high level for a moment. I was listening to a presentation just about kind of the aftermath of COVID and what this is going to do to our, not only just our economy and society, but then how do we translate that into actually how we manage our businesses. And one of the very thought-provoking comments was that during times of challenge or disruption, that's where innovation happens and where some really, creative inventions or, solutions evolve. And one of the comments that was made was that unfortunately right now, we are all working very, very, very hard to find new ways of doing what we used to do. And instead, we need to kind of think differently and saying, what's a better way of doing the things we did? And I think that's the encouraging line that I would kind of share with our partners and potential customers is, instead of working hard to do an in-person visit or a campus tour or, all the things we used to do to attract students and let them see our campuses, I would invite everybody to work with us to think differently in terms of, how do we reach this next generation of kids and how do we engage with them where they are? And where they are is they're on their digital devices, they're on their phones, they're on their computers, they're on your laptops. I mean, more often than not, if I see my son, he's got 2 or 3 screens in front of him, whether it's the TV, the laptop, or his phone or something. That's how they're engaging with the world. That's the world that they live in. So given that, how can we reach our engagement, application, and enrollment goals differently and rethink all of those traditional processes and try to make them better?
Such good advice, because I think that is where my brain kind of goes right now, is like, I think when especially when it's just the institutions who are just like, I don't know, like just pushing so hard against all friction to, like do things in person, but with like plexiglass everywhere or whatever. And it's just like, well, I mean, like you could invest that into long-term investments into like, digital education or something, like versus like, what are you going to do with that plexiglass after all this is over? Like to get frustrated in that idea of like, how can we do this better? Or like it doesn't just feel like you're trying to just like do what you did before, but different. I think that's such a good line. And hopefully that resonates with folks as well.
Yeah, and I know it's harder. I mean, it's easy to try to replicate to where you've been versus come up with an unknown, but it would be so much better for both sides, right? And in achieving that vision, I think, if we can kind of really push the envelope and push our thinking and, and we're really open to collaborating with our partners and, really thinking through innovative ways, like for orientations, orientation can be really boring, but it's one of those necessary evils. So, we're brainstorming and thinking of ways like how can we use gamification to make it more interesting and really kind of get the kids engaged in it and liking the experience versus it feeling like this necessity that you just kind of have to live through. So again, with this bent towards having a, innovation mindset, it's unlimited where we can go with this.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious then, I guess, just, with the great insights that you're sharing and just like how you're viewing this work, anything that you are reading, watching, and or listening to that you want to recommend that's been helping you to kind of get through this moment or help inspire you, motivate you, anything that comes to mind?
So, I mean, that's a great question for these days and times. I mean, I'll admit I'm a big news junkie. Obviously, I started in that, but I'm having a really hard time with the current environment. And it just creates so much anxiety for me. So since Labor Day weekend, I have turned it all off. I've had to stop. But it has given me a time to take a break and really, dig into some great books. And so I've been focusing mostly on nonfiction, but I read The Vanishing Half, The Water Dancer. I mean, there's some great literature that really helps put some perspective even on the social justice movement and, shines a light on some of those issues in a way that's, non-threatening, but really helps you understand some of the underlying threads of what's been going on. So I've been having to take like a little media break just because it's just so much right now, but still trying to take the time to really understand some of the deeper rooted issues that are, coming to the forefront right now. And obviously all of that plays such a large part on campuses across the nation as well, as students try to, have a voice and try to make some change. And it's been, hopefully less violence and more productive results will come of it.
Well, and I think it's helpful to sometimes I don't know, like you kind of come to it in a different way versus like like the news is just like, firsthand, like this is happening right now versus like, tell me a story of like, how did we get here? Or like someone's, personal journey or, those sort of things. So I think that is like an interesting way to kind of really still honor what people are going through and what people are working towards and those sort of things. So we'll link out to those books for sure. We will end, we always like to end the shows on an optimistic note. So we'll kind of contextualize this, in the world of college enrollment. Just what are you looking forward to, just to kind of wrap everything up and bring everything together? What are you looking forward to in the world of college enrollment?
On a personal front, I'm looking forward to, in a couple of months, my kids having gone through the admissions process and finding their perfect fit, both from a law school standpoint and my son's undergraduate standpoint. So we'll be living this for the next 6 months at least, for sure. But, on a higher level, for me, again, I am truly excited about the opportunities that lie ahead. I think, higher ed was one of the industries that hadn't gone through a lot of disruption. I hate that it's been forced this way, but I think it's going to be better for everyone. I look forward to a day where higher ed is more accessible and affordable to a larger group of students. And I really do think through digital extensions and thinking differently about, the traditional 4-year college process, that we will all end up in a much better place with much better offerings for a larger number of students.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm just the eternal optimist. And I think we it's like imperative that we feel that way of just like, it's awful. And I mean, we all have to accept that it was awful, kind of the sort of the catalyst for this, but like being optimistic of like, we can do better, kind of these like raw truths that this is laying bare of like, like the disruptions to higher ed of just like, wow, I mean, yeah, we were kind of overly reliant on all these things that required everybody to be in person, or like handing things to each other and mailing that, like, where it's just like, wow, okay, well, some like tough love here, but I guess we got to like start doing things differently now. And like you said, kind of long overdue, but, believing that like the outcome, the end goal here is really going to work better for everybody and, just be a really positive place and, just try to work towards that. So,
I mean, one just a really simple but substantial change was, with so many colleges going fully online in the fall, we know a lot of students who opted to take a gap year, and the fulfilling and engaging experiences that they're having without rushing into just a college decision, which was kind of like, here, that's just what you do, versus really being thoughtful about what you really want to do is just kind of like the tip of the iceberg of what the potential could be.
Yeah. Well, so much good stuff to think about, and such great insights. I appreciate you so much for jumping on and spending some time on the show and sharing all that you did. Just we'll have ways to connect with the stuff that you mentioned and the work that you're doing in the show notes. But yeah, just thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely. It's been wonderful. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the podcast. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Higher Ed Geek podcast.